Welcome to the Grief and Belief podcast, where we share stories of hope. Thank you for joining us. We hope this powerful story will help you feel God's love for you today.
Welcome to another episode of the Grief and Belief podcast. I'm David Mickelson.
And I'm Corey Andrews.
And we have a wonderful interview here today. We have April Gallier here, who's going to share her journey of grief and belief as we talk about her special son, Grant, and his experience passing away and April's experience with him passing away. And so we're excited to learn more about him and learn more about April. And April, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And April, we were discussing how to pronounce cerebral palsy. Are we saying that the right way?
Yeah, and it's funny because I'll even pronounce it wrong.
Yeah.
Every now and then, like cerebral, you hear cerebral palsy
Right.
or cerebral palsy, but it's cerebral. But
Cerebral.
sometimes, yeah.
Yep.
The Utah accent.
Yeah,
maybe comes out. I don't know if
that
what
must be
is.
it. Yeah.
Well, we're grateful to have you here. And from what you've already shared, we know this is going to be a special episode. And your experience is something that everybody needs to hear about. So we're grateful for that. Maybe just start off and let us know about you, your family, and just help everybody kind of get to know you.
Yeah, perfect. So, I mean, how much do you want to know? Like, I was born in Texas, moved to Utah when I was 11 or 12, did 6th grade through 12th grade in Sandy, and then moved down to Utah County shortly after high school was out. My friends kind of got into some questionable activities, and I needed new friends, and I figured I needed to find roommates, and so I moved out after my first semester of college, and then moved down to Utah County, met my husband a couple weeks after I moved down here, and we were married 8 months later or something like that. And then a year and a half later came our first daughter, Mikkel. She'll be 25 next month. And then we have 3 other children. We have Grant, who would be 20, Hallie, that is 15, almost 16, and Tessa, that is 11. So 3 girls, 1 boy. And we live in Springville. We've lived there most of our married life. We both work in Springville. It's a great little commute. It's a great little city. We love it.
And our kids went to the same school.
Yes, we've been at Reagan Academy. I was just figuring out today during board meeting, it's 19 years the school's been open, and we've been there all but one of those years. And that was just because we had a jaunt in Texas in the middle of our married life. So my oldest did 7th grade in Texas, and then we came back and went right back to Reagan. But been highly involved in the Reagan community, and this will probably be our last year, so we have just a couple months left there. So,
and then I know you from the orthodontist office, which I'm sure we'll get to know each other much better because I have about 4 kids with more coming with like crazy teeth. So
much, but we're fun. We're a fun group. I mean, I've been there for 14 years. Some of it super, super part-time as like Grant's health challenges kept me at home a little bit more. But now I'm, super full-time, and I like it though. It's good.
Well, thanks for helping us with our smiles.
Yeah. I think Grant and Ava would have been in the same grade.
Probably. So he was born in 2005. And gosh, I have no idea as far as like what year he would graduate, because for him it would have looked a lot different with the disabilities that he had. He could have stayed in school longer than like what a traditional student would do. One of his buddies is still in school, and he's a few years older than Grant. So,
Ava's 2004, but late in the
year.
But Grant didn't go to that school. He went to other schools. Is that right, or did he?
No, he never went to Reagan.
Right,
we thought about it. Yeah. And back then it was Brian and Justin instead of Justin and David, but he was accepted, and if we decided we wanted to send him there, they would have had to provide busing and PT, OT, vision, all of those resources that we could get through the district. They would have figured it out.
Sure.
But ultimately we decided it's already set up in the district. Why are we making it just so that I can say my kids go to Reagan? Like, we love Reagan. However, the district has things that are set up. And so why mess with it? And we honestly had the best people most of our years that we had him in school.
Yeah.
So like the best of the best.
A great decision.
Oh, yeah. So good.
Well, speaking of Grant, help us get to know Grant a little bit.
Yeah. So Grant, like I mentioned, was our number 2 kid. My kids are all 4 and 5 years apart. It's not something that we initially planned. We did have one miscarriage between my oldest and Grant. They still would have been a good chunk of time between each other. But he's 4.5 years younger than my oldest, Mikkel. And during my pregnancy, he was very active. To the point that I'm like, he's going to burst out of me, like kind of bouncing off the walls. And then one day he just stopped moving. And I was sick at the time. I had probably COVID is what if you thinking about it now, equates to just, deep chest congestion, coughing, can't breathe, all of that good stuff. And so I was taking medication I probably should not have been taking while pregnant, because I needed to be able to breathe and whatever. So I thought, fantastic, I've drugged my kid.
Oh, no.
And, but once I clued into it, I started doing like sugar. I started taking in some caffeine, poking and prodding, just making sure, trying to like motivate him to like, wake back up. And I knew he was still there, but I wasn't getting the responses that I would typically get from those things. They also say like laying on your left side or your right side. I don't know which one it is, but all those different things that they say. So I called into my OBGYN. They said, come in for a non-stress test and let's just, check for heart tones, just give you that peace of mind. It'll be fine. So what should have been like a quick, check at the doctor's, in the middle of all that, I'm like trying to find some ballet slippers and get Mikkel to ballet and all, all the momming things that you do.
The rest of life has to happen.
Yeah, life was still happening, and like arranging for her to go somewhere to get to that dance class while we got the shoes. And anyways, so we get to the hospital and they're like, I don't know if you guys have seen that, but they like strap a thing onto the belly, right? And they're checking for those heart tones. And then this was something I'd never done before or have done since, but they were zapping my stomach, like zzz, zzz, like to try to wake him up, like not electrocuting, but like a little stimuli. Yeah. Weirdest feeling.
For us with our daughter, they did a duck call, like a loud noise.
Really?
Yeah, that was different as well. I don't know. They may have done the zapping. I'll have to ask my wife, but yeah, it was.
Like
it
while
was
she was pregnant?
Mm-hmm, yeah, while they were doing an ultrasound.
Wow.
And so, yeah, they were doing loud noises, and I think they may have done the electrical too. But yeah, it's
like the craziest thing. Like just, and I guess, whatever they need to do to wake the baby up, right? Yeah. But they were also doing an ultrasound to like check for other, I don't know, things.
Any other concerns?
And they could see that there was the amniotic fluid had some issues. There was fluid that they were seeing around the head, around the brain, around the heart, things like that. And then they knew just like with his heart rate that he was in distress. They didn't really know why he was in distress, but they knew they needed to get him out. So I was 35 and a half weeks when I had gone in for this NST, and they decided we needed to operate. They chose to do an emergency C-section because they didn't think that with his kind of state where he was at, that he was going to make it through a regular delivery successfully. So they did the emergency C-section. When he was pulled out, they did find that the cord was wrapped around his neck. And so they were grateful that they didn't do a regular delivery because that would have been worse. And so, unraveled it, got him going. I don't remember anything about like what the APGAR was or anything like that because he pretty much was carted off, pretty sick. And then they got him stabilized, and they got me stitched back up into a recovery room. And then he was ambulanced to Utah Valley, and we remained in separate hospitals for 3 days while I was recovering at that point, incision, and I'm still coughing, so I'm like holding pillows against me, trying to like
open up. Yeah.
reopen. And I'm like, hoping that they all got stitched really nice and tight, but just feeling miserable, and then also feeling mentally, emotionally away from my child, right? That was hard. Yeah. And they all wanted a name, and they wanted this, and they wanted that. I'm like, dude, I haven't even seen my kid.
Yeah,
more than like here he is, and now we're going off. Like I saw him not even a whole minute probably before they took him off to Utah Valley. So, but once we got back into the same hospital, we got him named. It was not the name that I had planned and had embroidered, and my husband got his wish, and I didn't get my. Well, his wish was not what he was named. He's not. He didn't want Grant, and I wanted Weston. It was I wanted Weston, and he didn't know what he wanted, but he knew it wasn't Grant, or he knew it wasn't Weston.
He knew what he didn't want.
Yeah. Anyway, so, but I needed to see him, and but I saw him, and I'm like, oh, he's not Weston, but we still didn't know what he was going to be, and so it took us a couple more days to figure that out, but. We got him a name, gave him, several blessings along the way. And once we were reunited, he started to take a turn for the better. His heart initially was one of the things that was struggling. When your body starts to shut down, to die, extra fluid rushes to your vital organs. So your brain, your kidneys, your heart, your lungs, things like that. So we had a lot of extra fluid on the different areas of his body, but most specifically, they were worried about his heart. And he got to the point where one of his ventricles was almost going to give out if it kept enlarging. And it just wasn't going to work anymore. They got it stabilized. Everything was good. And then they just started working on getting him stronger, getting his lungs stronger, getting his feeds going. He was 4'4" when he was born, so pretty tiny. And so we needed to bulk him up a little bit, right? Yeah. He never bulked up, ever. That kid was like the skinniest, scrawniest thing his whole entire life. But we got to the point, I think we were so February 2nd when he was born, and then we ended up leaving, I think, right at the end of February. So I think we were in the hospital like 26 days. And he came home from the hospital at his birth weight at 4'4". I think it was a few grams heavier. But during that hospital stay, they had done several like head ultrasounds. They all came back pretty normal, given like what we had gone through. But they did an MRI 2 to 3 days before we went home. They called it kind of standard procedure, and it came back that they found brain damage. Pretty spotty all throughout the brain. It wasn't something that was like localized left side, right side, anything like that. It was pretty all throughout the brain.
From all the water, all the extra fluid that had come, or?
So at that point, they didn't really know, but there was the theory that, you remember when he was born, he had the cord kinked or cord wrapped around his neck. So then the theory was, he probably lost blood supply, lost oxygen for a period of time. It kinked off in some way, shape, or form for a period of time, causing the brain damage. And then the brain damage then kind of spiraled everything else. I mean, there's a whole lot of things they were looking at. He had a condition called hydrops, which I think is more just like everything rushing, but they are also worried about, what is I think it's a dog or a cat thing that you can get, parvo. Have you heard of that? Like it's a thing that I think it passes through kitty litter. It's like a disease. They thought it was that for a while anyways, but it ended up just, once they saw the MRI, they think it was just that kind of domino effect of everything. And at that point they said, he's young, the brain can rewire. It's something that we'll just kind of watch and see what happens as he learns and grows. Because, we have these kind of spots all throughout the brain, but the brain can rewire around the damage that's there. And we'll just kind of watch and see how things go and see if he hits his milestones, if he doesn't hit his milestones, and just go from there. And then here's all these resources of XYZ. And I was 25, 26, something like that at the time. And it's so funny because we would go to the doctor and the doctor would be like, oh, his tone looks so good. And I'm like, oh, he must have gotten my olive skin. Mm-hmm. I thought they were talking about his color tone, not his muscle tone. I have no idea what they were even talking about. Yep. So we learned a lot over the next 12 years. Mm-hmm. I should have an RN or
you earned it.
Some sort of doctor, after my name. I don't, but I should have all those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we came home on oxygen, we were still very, very tiny. And then we started learning all of what it is to have like a preemie with a whole bunch of medical conditions. And it was pretty clear pretty early on that we weren't hitting those milestones. No. Simple, like having a rattle that you shake, and usually a baby would kind of track it, right? Mm-hmm. Or seeing a parent walking across the room, those things weren't happening. Mm-hmm. And so we got early intervention on board pretty quick. I want to say probably a month or so after we had been home. And they started helping with PT, OT. Eventually we added speech and vision. Actually, vision probably got added pretty quick. Mm-hmm. Vision was probably there, but speech was added later. And then after 6 months, he was cleared heart-wise. But then we started with some infantile spasms, like a type of seizure, not like a grand mal that you see the whole body shaking, but it was more like a contractual thing, like where his whole body would kind of do like a crunch, almost like the whole body was just contracting. And so then that started a whole slew of different things to figure out, right? Yeah. We were also working with ortho as like he had kind of like a club foot thing, so we had him casted. There's a lot of things that we were doing initially and still trying to figure out how to care for our older child. And she was starting kindergarten, like having those big life things and still not feeling left out, trying to figure out how to parent two kids, which is always tricky anyways. But then you have medical things on top of it. But with the seizures, I had to start giving him injections, and I think it was daily, but now I'm second guessing. It might have been weekly, but I think it was daily. But I got to the point that I could inject him while he was sleeping, and he would sleep through it. But there was a few times that he would jump, and then the needle would go flying, and then now I have to like poke him again, and it was terrible, like having to poke your brand new itty bitty baby, and it was awful. And eventually he grew out of them. They were infantile, so it was something we still had to go back and see neurology and do a bunch of EEGs. For years, we still followed up with neurology, but something that he kind of grew out of. But he also had early on like a hard time keeping feeds down. We wanted me to supplement with a high calorie formula, but he just still couldn't keep it down. Yeah. And all my kids actually had like a reflux type thing, but my girls, once they were like 6.5, 7 months, they just grew out of it. And like, they just all like, you'd feed them and you'd sit them up and everything would come back up, and they had to outgrow it. But with him, he never outgrew that. So we ended up placing a G tube, and I want to say he was probably 6 to 9 months old, something like that, so that he could get his feeds that way, because we just weren't doing very good orally, and he wasn't gaining weight, right? And he had that G tube till he was 4, and then he learned how to eat. Oh boy, he learned how to eat. So his 3rd birthday, we have the best videos of him eating an ice cream cone, and him like spastically grabbing the person's hand that's holding it and just bringing it closer and just chowing down on this ice cream cone. And from that day on, he started eating. And we probably kept the G tube longer than we needed to, but it was more like my security blanket of just in case he got sick, or just in case, this or that. But he started eating just about everything. And then we were able to take it out, and he ate like just by mouth for a long time. But he loved ice cream. Like that was something that kid, he could pound food, but he could pound the ice cream.
Lots of ice cream. It seems like that's kind of become a theme.
It has.
Like
it has. Yeah. It's something that's you can't celebrate Grant and his memory without a bowl of ice cream. Right. And I don't love ice cream. Like it's good. It's whatever. But
you're offending lots of people. Right
I know. I can totally, but I can pass it. If it's Bluebell, I have to have it.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if you've had Bluebell ice cream, but like, ooh, Bluebell ice cream. But he wasn't picky on his ice cream. Right. He did love vanilla the most, but he really wasn't picky on his ice cream. But yeah, he loved food and he loved ice cream. Yeah. So.
And I found out he loved the ladies.
Oh, he was a ladies' man. He was a ladies' man. So he liked to blow kisses to the ladies, especially. One year for Halloween, we dressed him just in a nice Sunday outfit, and I found a thin box that we strapped to his wheelchair table, and we made it like a little window in that box and made it into a kissing booth. And it said like in the kid handwriting, like kisses free or 5 cents, 25 cents. I can't remember what we put on there, but he just dressed up for the ladies and blew kisses all day long. Oh, and awesome. We got out of hospital admissions several times with him blowing kisses to the doctors and the nurses because he knew how to work the ladies. He also loved Family Feud, especially. It's like game shows, but Family Feud the most. And so Richard Dawson, I don't know if you're familiar with Richard Dawson, one of the hosts of Family Feud back, like he's one of the first, probably the first host of Family Feud. Yeah. But he was a ladies' man, and he would kiss all of the contestants, which ick.
Yep.
Nowadays, right?
Can't do that.
Ick. Yeah. But I don't know if it was something to do with Richard Dawson that he just took this liking to him, but he just would blow kisses, and that's how he would show that he loved you and appreciated you. He would also do a lot of if he liked your food.
He's passing the message along.
Yeah. There was one time at visiting Grandma and Grandpa down in Page, Arizona, that she had made just Hawaiian haystacks, nothing super fancy, but the whole time he was just praising that dinner with his and Grandma got real tickled with like her cooking. Yeah. She's like, I've never had anybody just be so excited about my food. But yeah, he loved the ladies, he loved his game shows, and he loved ice cream.
Those are
three main things. He loved his sister, him and Mikkel are there is a bond in heaven with those two. Yeah.
Yep. That special sibling bond.
It's different. Yeah. And obviously the other two, they weren't with him the whole time, right?
And she's probably maybe his older sister.
Yeah, she was an extra mom. She was. She taught us a lot. And she continues. She took on special education as her career. It's something she was made for that from day one. Yeah. But she is a big, vital part of him growing up, and was there from day one helping. And she had dolls that she would put oxygen on and do all the things that we were doing with Grant. She was just mimicking all those things. So it was fun. We grew up together. Yeah.
Well, take us, first of all, thank you. Yeah. That's what we love to hear. We love to hear what makes Grant who he is and his personality and how he shared that with everybody. Tell us a little bit as he got closer to kind of the end of his life. How did that approach? What was that like? Kind of help us understand his passing. Yeah.
So we had a lot of really good years in between those kind of first few years that we were trying to figure out all of the medical ins and outs. And then we were still doing things, right? But towards the end, he just started having initially, like, we had that failure to thrive come back where he wasn't keeping foods down. When he was younger, when we placed the G-tube, we also did what's called a Nissen, where we kind of like tied his stomach in a knot so he wasn't able to throw up. Mm-hmm. So it was supposed to help keep food down so that he could gain weight. We had that checked, and because he should not have been able to throw up, and he still was. Mm-hmm. We had it checked; it was still intact. They don't know how he was throwing up, but we went back to throwing up again. And at that point, he was still pounding the food, like that kid could eat, but not gaining any weight. Like, I don't think he ever got over 50 pounds at even 12 years old. Like, he was skinny boy. And so they just said we needed to put the G-tube back in so that we could do some supplemental feeds at night while he was sleeping. And he could still eat regularly, because I didn't want him to regress if we just went back to straight tube feeding, because that was going to lose his abilities. We needed to keep as much going for what he could do for his limited abilities. We didn't want to lose that. So they said, okay, just at night, we'll just do those extra feeds at night. And so we were doing some high calorie feeds throughout the night, but then those were coming back up. And he also started having some breathing issues, probably about 9 months beforehand. It really was all about the same time. But we also had a point where he had this implanted, we called it his hockey puck. It was about the size of a hockey puck. It was just implanted in his stomach. It's called his baclofen pump. So baclofen's a muscle relaxer. And it went from, there's like a little reservoir in there, and then there was like a little catheter that went to his spine. And then it administered like a little small drop of this muscle relaxer throughout the day. Mm-hmm. But that pump had a battery life, and it started beeping at us to let us know that the battery needed to be replaced, which required another surgery. That was the spring of 2017, and he got sick, and so we had to postpone surgery. And it was COVID, actually. I looked back, and it says on there coronavirus, which is crazy because I didn't even know coronavirus was like a thing but obviously it's a different strain, right? Yeah. But he got sick with that. We postponed the surgery, did this surgery, and then shortly after that, he spiked a fever, and there was some fluid around his pump, and we found that his pump, with like a little, not a blood draw, but just like a sample draw, I guess, what the fluid was a staph infection. And so somehow he contracted the staph infection, but we got him on antibiotics and changed those several times, just trying to find the right antibiotics with the infection control doctors, that they thought that it was something that should kill it. We'll do this 2 weeks worth of the antibiotics. And they were hoping that because the baclofen pump is all centered into his spinal column, that it wouldn't have affected his shunt that he had in his head, to kind of help control his spasticity. And because it's all kind of in the same system, right? That central nervous system, but in the spinal fluid and all that stuff. But 2, maybe 3 days after we finished our round of antibiotics, fever came back, and we knew that the shunt had been compromised as well. So we had to take him back in. We were taking back out the new pump. We're taking out the shunts, which both of those are controlling his spasticity. So his poor little body was just like stiff and rigid all day long. And then he's like kind of arching backwards because everything is just tight. And he was so uncomfortable. He's going through withdrawals because of not having the baclofen. And they were doing oral baclofen, but it's different than the drip of it. I don't know the different terminology. Probably used to.
You're into orthodontics, not into...
This is true. I used to have all these medical terms down, but not anymore. But anyways, it's just different orally versus the other way. And so they were trying to find the right dosing that way. And he was just miserable and still throwing up and not keeping anything down. And we had, several times with those infections that we were like, this is it.
Yeah.
And then he wouldn't. Like, it would, we keep going and we keep going. And there was one weekend, there was one weekend that he just couldn't keep anything down. Like, it was just, everything kept coming up. Regular feeds plus nighttime feeds. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to take him in, going to get some fluids. We'll be back in a couple days. And we had done that, I want to say hundreds of times over the years. Like,
it's normal.
Yeah. Like, he wasn't very good at drinking. We couldn't get him like fluids like he should. He had a harder time with like those thin liquids like water or juice. And so we really had to do it several times. Like, if I say hundreds, it probably is pretty accurate over his years. And so it should have been a quick in and out. And while we were there, they decided to change his G tube from going just straight into the stomach, but then a GJ tube. So it bypasses the stomach and goes into the duodenum, I think is what it's called. Guys, I don't even know. Starts with the J. That's why.
We believe you.
J, yeah. We're all medical doctors here, right? We know what we're talking about. Anyways, just so that he wouldn't have anything to throw back up. Yeah. And so they replaced that weekend and, hoping to just continue to gain weight. And at the same time, his breathing had just gotten worse. He was very raspy. It's kind of sad to like listen and watch videos back in that 9 months to hear how raspy his voice was and just his breathing in general. And then also his oxygen levels just started kind of plummeting pretty quickly, actually. And so they did some like chest x-rays to see, what was going on. They found that his lungs, the alveoli, or the little branches in the lungs, had gotten sticky, and they weren't expanding like they were supposed to. And they did some breathing treatments, trying to like force air into the lungs and kind of just puff them back up and dry them out, I guess, essentially. And it just wasn't working. And so we had pulmonology coming in and saying, well, we could do a tracheotomy. And I'm like, so we've done all these other surgeries in the last few months, and you want to put him through another surgery just so that he can continue to be here for us. And felt very selfish on our parts to keep him here. But at the same time, while this is all happening, he just kind of tuned out, like kind of checked out. Where, we're not blowing kisses anymore. We're not talking, which his talking was very minimal. He could say a few words here and there. He could say mom, dad, grandma, Kel. No, he didn't say Kel. He said sis, and that meant Kel. Maybe he said Kel. You guys, I don't remember. She would be the one to be able to tell you that. But he stopped talking. He wouldn't ask for food. He wouldn't do any of those things. He just checked out. Yeah. And so that was, for me, a sign that he's done fighting. And so we called our parents. We called our oldest daughter. And we had a powwow with them. And we said, he's done fighting. He's making it pretty clear that he's done fighting. And we need to honor that. And so we signed a DNR, and that's not something that any parent should ever have to do, ever. Yeah. It's not something that you should have to sign up for. And that was 10 or 11 o'clock on the night of July 10th, and by 8:30-ish, I don't remember the exact time, that morning, he was gone. And it was just so fast. Like, it was not something that we were prepared for it to be that fast, but it was fast. And then came the time that we had to tell our other two kids because we had left them in the dark. And that's something that I replay on a pretty regular basis right now because we're going through a lot of therapy with my teenager who was 8 at the time. She feels that we left her in the dark and we should have included her in some of those decisions. But I also, being the parent, was like, no, I'm protecting you.
Right.
That's
only
your
8.
kid.
You're only 8.
You are only 8. She had just gotten baptized in the middle of all of this too. And so I'm like, no, you're just barely 8 years old. You don't need to be making these, you don't need to be a part of these adult decisions.
Yeah.
But she very much wishes that she was clued in. So that was hard, telling my girls, you know, he's in this next room and he's not here anymore. And then having to call all the different family members and friends and teachers and bus aides and anybody that was ever influential in his life, because there were so many influential people in his life. And having to rehash that story time after time after time was exhausting.
I remember, like, we kept Ava's phone on. In fact, we're still paying for her phone number now, you know, many years later. But I remember, you know, we let everybody know, but then she would get these random text messages from kind of distant, you know, so I remember one from a kid she had met at FSY who 4 or 5 months later, hey, Ava, how are you doing? I haven't heard from you in a long time. And it's like, hey, this is Ava's dad. She passed away a few months ago. And he was like, you're kidding me. I said, why don't we jump on a phone call and let's talk through this. But it was like replaying that over and over and over again. I love to talk about Ava, but I didn't love to tell people that, you know.
Exactly. So that was hard. It was having to rehash it. It was hard because every phone call you'd get yourself together and then you'd have to start it all over again. So it was mentally draining. Yeah. But I think one of the hardest things was leaving that time at the hospital. The last time, like, leaving without him. I just remember breaking down because I was leaving him in the basement of the hospital in the corner area just for whoever to come in.
Strangers to come take care of him.
Yeah. And at that point, obviously, it's just his body, but it's not something, like, after all the hospital admissions that we had been through over his 12 years, I never left him for more than a couple hours at a time to go and see a friend or to be with my kids or maybe to go on a date with my husband or something like that. And I always left him with grandparents or somebody was there. We never left him. That was not something that we did. Like, he was always cared for, and leaving him there was the hardest thing.
So telling your family, telling his little siblings, signing the DNR, leaving the hospital, all of these things are the most difficult, are just such hard things to do. Can you share how you were, maybe over time, how you processed through your grief, how you thought through things, how you survived those days and weeks after Grant passed away?
Yeah, I think, like, initially you really kind of go into, like, just this planning mode where you have the funeral that you need to go into, and so then it's like, you just keep busy. And if you keep busy, you don't have to think about things, right? And so then it was, but, like, I've always kind of been a party planner. Maybe not as I get older because I'm too tired. But, like, in my younger years and still at this point, I still like to plan parties. Like, his parties were also the best parties out of all my kids. Like, sorry to the other kids that his parties were just way cool. And so this was planning his final party, and it needed to be big. And so just really going into those motions. And so you don't really process things. But there would be times that, like, okay, the bishop would come over or the Relief Society president would come over and, like, well, what do you want to do for the funeral? And it's like, I've never done this before. And how do you make these big decisions? And then you're rehashing it again and then trying to, like, decide musical numbers. And then now there's songs that are completely ruined for life because it was at his funeral, you know? And so I think you're going through those motions, and some of it's very robotic because, like, you just know what needs to be done and you're just checking those boxes of the to-do list. and you're not taking care of yourself. You're barely taking care of your kids or your husband.
All you have to eat are the cookies that people are bringing by, and brownies and donuts.
All the things. And really, we had so many good people. Like, our ward was amazing. Like, our ward, they carried us for that 9-10 months. Like, they so much service that they gave to us, and they just continued. We had another death in the neighborhood about a year prior, and that one rocked our whole neighborhood too. It's like, but they all just come together, and it's amazing what, like, your ward family will do for you. Like, they carried us. I mean, obviously our family and our extended family, they carried us, but man, those ward members, special place in my heart for them.
Yeah, we've experienced a lot of that as well in our experiences, for sure.
Yeah, but for me, like, it's just always been, you just keep busy.
Yep.
And you don't think about things. And when you think about things, then it comes in. But there's also times that you start thinking, and then it's, just random. A song will come on the road or on the radio, or it actually happens at work pretty frequently. I have a picture that my oldest painted. She does watercolors, and she painted a picture of our family. So we get asked about it pretty frequently, because he's in there in a picture frame that my youngest is holding. And so we get asked pretty frequently, well, tell me about, your son. And so then it goes from talking teeth in a ortho consultation to talking about how my son died. And sometimes I can tell that story, and it's matter of fact, and other times we're a blubbering mess. And it's like they came in to talk about teeth, and we're talking about life and grief, and it's those random people that you didn't know that you were going to have a heartfelt conversation with. But it helps to keep his memory alive. And that's something that we try to do on the regular basis too, is just to talk about him regularly and keep him at the forefront of our mind. And like our life still revolves around him, just in a different way. But my youngest, she was 3.5 when he passed. And so she didn't have a lot of time with him, but she talks about him the most, which I love. I love.
It's like they're trying to grasp onto something that it was there, but like, it seems like the youngest ones often are the ones who are asking more frequently and talking about it. I mean, I think our youngest one is the one who talks about Ava the most by far. And she was a little older when Ava passed away, but still fairly young. And I don't know, it seems like you've shared maybe some similar experiences.
Yeah, and it's always at nighttime. They always want, we're getting in bed.
Is it because they're stalling because they don't want to go to bed?
That's what I think it is.
What it is.
Wait, like, can we talk about Cameron? Or just last night, my boy brought in, he had raided a little box that we have for Cameron, and he had pulled out a stuffed animal. Can I sleep with Cameron's doggy tonight? And then it always starts a conversation, and he met her one time.
Wow.
He got to meet her once, and but he'll hold that, and say I miss her, and we talked about, do you remember? He was 2 at the time when he met his little sister, but there is a special connection, kind of like you mentioned with your daughter, right? Like maybe they knew each other before a little bit.
I think so.
That there was a connection, and I remember that moment when my son met my daughter for the first time, that I felt like, yep, he knows who this is, and I hope that he carries her with him throughout his life. And so as you consider you and your family, how have you remembered Grant? How have you kept that connection?
Yeah. So kind of in that same thing, my daughter, my youngest, she has one of his stuffed animals, like you mentioned, and she sleeps with that every night. She cannot go, like if she decides to have a sleepover at a friend's house, make sure you bring me popcorn. Popcorn is the name of the dog.
Yeah.
And she won't sleep without it. Wow. She's like almost 12 now. Like, it's still something. I think it'll be probably going on her wedding night with her, like it's a part of her.
Yeah.
We have pictures around the house that obviously we do. The biggest thing that we do twice a year, we serve up at Primary Children's in his honor. So we serve on his birthday, so February 2nd, Groundhog's Day. And then we also serve on his angelversary, or just the date of his passing, which is July 11th, which is Slurpee Day too. I don't know if you guys know that. But 7-Eleven Day, yeah. We go for ice cream. We don't ever actually do that, but if you ever need to pick me up on 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
But on his, well, I guess kind of fast forward, right? So he passed away in July, and then 7 months later was his first birthday. And wanting to always stay busy, but also in my party planning kind of crazy ways, I wanted to do something big. And when in those 9-10 months before he passed, we always talked about every meal we would eat in the Ronald McDonald family room at Primary Children's, or every load of laundry that I was doing up there. We would talk about how we needed to give back. We needed to help, repay all of the meals that we ate, all of the loads of laundry. I probably went through my own big Costco size of, laundry detergent. And there was times that my kids would come and visit, and we would just go down to the kitchen and dig in their cupboards and make cookies or muffins, or, just something to do something with my girls while I was still at the hospital. But my husband could go and sit with Grant while I spent some time with my girls. And so we always just knew we wanted to do something to give back. So when his first birthday came around, we decided we wanted to do dinner. But then I needed to take it to another level because I'm a little extra. I blame that on my mom. But we put a plea out to our friends and family, and we wanted to stock the shelves. And so we asked for people to, next time they go to Costco, to pick something up, or send me a Venmo and I'll go do it. And the first year we ended up, we gathered $705, and we went shopping, and we just kind of, I'll take one of these, I'll take two of these. We were just filling the carts, right? And we had kind of a wish list. Primary Children's, or the Ronald McDonald House, they have a wish list of things that they need for just to keep their services up and going, right? And so we knew kind of some of those things. I knew laundry detergent was on there. I knew, some of those basic things that, Hot Pockets. I don't know how many Hot Pockets I ate while I was there. I will not eat a Hot Pocket ever again in my life. But just all the different things that we went through, right? So I knew some of those things I'm just grabbing. And a little bit of panic in my mind as I'm shopping, how much is this going to come to?
You don't usually shop for $700 worth of stuff at Costco. So it's not a way to equate, here's what I usually get.
But I also know that I go to Costco and I'm how was that $200?
It's always more than you think it was.
Yep.
I go there for one thing and it's $200 later every time.
Yep.
It adds up really quick. So I'm thinking I'm going to get up to the register and I'm going to end up owing, which whatever, if I owed, whatever. But I had $705, and I get up to the cash register and it rang up at $714.73. And my sister was there shopping with me, and I think my mom and probably a kid or two. And we're jumping up and down, yelling, screaming, high-fiving, hugging,
We did.
crying.
It's a miracle, yeah.
No, we are so excited. And the cashier is is this a record? Why all the celebrations? And we explained to him, no, this is a huge deal. We had $705 and I spent $9 extra, and that was it. No. And so obviously we were being watched over and guided of what we could spend that day. It was just so cool. And we had a whole bunch of other people bring over donations, so we had our whole back of our van was just filled from top to bottom, and we were able to stock the shelves. And we had so much stuff that they had to overflow it over to the actual Ronald McDonald House downtown, and so much stuff. But now, year after year, we continue to do the same thing. We average about $2,000, sometimes more, sometimes less. It's usually about $2,000 to $2,500. That we have just amazing friends and family that they help us celebrate every year. And some of those people don't even know Grant. They never met him. but they know about him and his stories, and his legacy just continues to live on. He had the best smile, and it's one of the things I wish everybody could still see his smile and hear his laugh, because his laugh was so contagious. And even those people that didn't know him, we still can like carry that on so that people can see that through us. And serving up at primaries, hearing some of those family stories, we're trying to figure out if we served at the same time that you were up there, and I'd have to go back and see when they let us back in with COVID.
I'm pretty sure I ate one of those Hot Pockets. I think that was me.
Oh, so many Hot Pockets, right? But it beats the cafeteria food. I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
not. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I did. I loved that place. Like even
It's
just
like
to
a
go
home away from home,
take
right?
a break,
Yep.
grab a bag of chips or whatever it was, and just feel like I could relax for a second.
Yeah.
And before I walk back into that room,
Yeah, it's a lot. It's
and
heavy.
be there.
That hospital's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And so to take a break for a minute to either get some food, refresh, they have a whole bunch, like they have books, they have games, they have the little kids area that's like a home away from home, and they had chocolate.
Yeah.
You guys, there's sometimes that you're just in the hospital and you just need chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always make sure to take lots of chocolate when I go, because I walked that hospital a lot sometimes looking for chocolate if they didn't have it.
Yeah,
So there's sometimes you just need that. But
And sometimes it was the people too that were there serving, that they could empathize with, what I was experiencing, what I was going through. I remember one time just sitting there with this 7-year-old boy who'd lost his brother, and we just started chatting, and it was heavenly. It was sweet, and such a heavenly place, and cool that there's angels like your family that come and keep it that way and keep it special. And so
yeah, we love to hear the family stories. We usually know a family that's inpatient at the time, or we find out as we're talking with them in line that there's a connection somewhere, which is really cool.
Mm.
We've had cousins that have been in there, just close friends. It's always nice to serve those that you know, but even to hear some of those other stories, it's fantastic. And that's just the way that we as a human society, like we get through our trials through other people. And sometimes you know them and sometimes you don't. And it's those angels that are on earth or not, that are helping us get through everything.
Yeah. Just one more thought on that is it's heavenly, but it's also Zion. And I was just thinking about God's definition of Zion, what Zion is. It's one heart, one mind. You kind of understand what you're going through when you're in that place, but then also that there's no poor among you, and you coming and donating and giving and you're poor in spirit, you're poor in chocolate, at times, but there's people there showing up, and so I don't know. There's just something special.
Yeah, and if we can brighten someone's day and just make it a little bit easier, ease that burden a little bit, because being in the hospital is a big burden.
Yeah.
So if we can ease that burden just a little bit and brighten those spirits, that's what we're there for twice a year.
Yeah.
It's just to put a smile on some people's faces, and we always have ice cream, so everybody usually leaves smiling.
Yeah.
So
it's like grant wishes?
we kind of like termed it grant a wish. But there is like a foundation called that, so I don't know how legal that is or whatever, but we call it grant a wish. I made little aprons that we all wear. And it's a little play on words with his name. It's nothing, just something silly that we do. But just if he was here, he would, we wish that we would do some service, and give back. And that's what we've kind of turned it into our little mission, that we just give back as much as we can. Right now, it's just twice a year. But we look forward to those days. And honestly, like this last year, I kept waiting for the calendar to come out, and I kept watching it, and I wasn't coming out. Well, come to find out, it was a different calendar that they started a whole 2025 one.
Oh, to sign up to get on the list. Yeah.
It was like a Sign Up Genius thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why is it not showing up past December 31st? Well, it's because they had a whole new one. Well, once I figured that out, February 2nd was gone, and I was mad.
Oh, no.
Oh, I was so mad. I'm like, I should have a standing reservation.
You know this.
Twice a year. I've been doing this for 7 years. Why am I not just standard on there?
Yeah.
I was so upset. My husband's like, it's fine. We can just do the first. I'm like, it's not the same. Anyways, and by some miracle, somebody backed out, and we were able to do the second this year.
Yeah.
And it all just always works out. Like I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But it always works out, whether it's that Costco trip or we've gone up there and the stoves haven't been working or the ovens haven't been working. And we're like, what are we supposed to do now? We've planned this meal around, certain things, and it all works out in some way, shape, or form. And that's, him watching out for us and probably laughing along the way, because he would think that things like this are ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, if you stub your toe, he's going to laugh at you. Like, if you hit your head, he's going to laugh at you. Like, he was very much a normal little boy that would laugh at those things,
Yeah.
So
We'll link out to maybe some people who want to help contribute and participate. We'll put in the episode notes some ways that people can join with you
that'd be awesome.
in granting a wish.
Yes,
doing
I love
grant
that.
a wish.
I love that.
I guess, April, as you kind of consider your experience with grief over these last 7 or 8 years, what have you come to believe about Jesus Christ through your experience?
That he's here for us to, like, take away our grief, to take away our sadness. The atonement is real. It's something that I always thought the atonement was just like, I made a mistake, I needed to repent, whether that was just, having a conversation with my Heavenly Father or going and talking to the bishop. Like, what kind of sin is that, right?
Yep.
That's repentance and the atonement. That's it. That's what I thought for the longest time. But as I've matured, as I've learned, as I've grown, probably aged a little bit, too, along the way, it's not just for repentance. It's for all things. It's for our good days. It's for our bad days. It's for the little tiny things. It's for the big things and everything in between. Without his sacrifice in Gethsemane, it's something that I couldn't do the daily basis without that knowledge and without that help. And I know he's just a prayer away. And sometimes that prayer is audible, and sometimes it's in the bathroom at Primary Children's, because that's the only privacy that you have. Yeah. And sometimes it's driving in the car. Sometimes it's a quick something in your head. Like, there's a lot of different ways to speak with him. And I know that my Savior paid the price, and it makes the day-to-day a little bit easier. And I can get through any trials, whether that's past, present, or future. I wish I was exempt from trials. I feel like I should be able to tap out at this point. Like, where's my tap out buddy that, like, I've done this. I've done my hard trials. But guess what? They just keep coming. Yeah. Because life doesn't stop. Yeah. Just because you have one hard trial. Yeah. So that's why I've learned that he's here to help us through those, both big and small. Yeah. And
Thank you.
So.
Thank you for letting us get to know Grant. A lot of these interviews we didn't meet, those people before they passed away, but I felt like I got to know Grant a little bit today, and felt a lot of joy that I got to get to know Grant. And so thank you. Thanks for introducing us to him. Yeah.
And for inspiring some ideas about honoring and remembering our loved ones. I think that's people want to do that.
Gotta figure out what works for you, and something that would honor that person, that individual, and be creative. Think outside the box. There's so many different ways to honor those that we love, and sometimes it's the same each year, and sometimes it's different. But figuring out what works for you and your situation, but for us, this works.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yep. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for another episode of the Grief and Belief podcast. We'll look forward to sharing another interview next week.
Thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their story of hope. If you know someone who might be blessed by hearing this message, please share it with them. We would love it if you would subscribe, rate, and review, and comment on our podcast so others can find it. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, as well as join our Grief and Belief Facebook group. Thank you to our sponsor, High Five Live Tours, where fun and joy meet on inspiring travel experiences. Special thanks to our producer, Misty Lynn Howard. Check out her history podcast called Faith Ignited. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.